It's another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast, but are you subscribed? If not, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Spread the word about the Christian Reeve Podcast and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a returning guest. He's been on the show before. His name is David Somerfleck. He is a digital marketing specialist, all-round marketing guy. He's the owner of DMS Blue. If you haven't seen the first episode that he was on, I implore you to go check that out. Go listen to it. It's a fascinating listen. But I brought him back here today because I knew we had unfinished business. There's plenty of things I want to ask you about, and I'm excited to see where this goes. First of all, welcome back on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you again for having me, Christian. I had fun talking to you before, and you're actually, you may be surprised to know this, but you're probably one of the few. In fact, I know you're one of the few. I don't want to say you're the only one, but you're one of the few podcasters who I have communicated with or followed online or been a guest on their podcast who actually promotes the podcast, does it repeatedly over time.
Okay.
And also will take the interview and cut it into little segments so you have more to promote, which is marketing, basically. In fact, it's quite basic.
Yeah, that's
tip of the hat to you.
Well, thank you. But that perplexes me. I mean, I got to say, like, a lot of these things, okay, I'm not going to sit here and say I did things perfectly straight off the bat, but like, yeah, so for instance, the podcast started audio only, then I started doing video, then I started doing clips, right? So it was progressive, but like, I always kind of knew in the back of my mind that I should be doing it. It was just a kind of thing of, oh, I don't know. Is it really worth it? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Then I realized you absolutely have to do it. But forgetting all that for a second, you absolutely have to at least promote it. I mean, how are people supposed to know about it or find it? Like,
even if you don't know how to splice it in different segments, which I get, or you may not have the time.
True.
That's if you have a weekly podcast and you don't have people helping you with it, where do you get the time to splice it into different segments? Unless you're really good at it, you don't have a life. I mean, let's get real. I've got clients. I've got a wife who, I need to check on her. She wants to check on me. We want to go out and do things. So it's where the devil do I get time to sit down and listen to a podcast interview and then splice it into segments if I'm doing it weekly. If I do it bi-weekly or monthly, maybe.
It's interesting that you raised that point because I've not actually spoken about this before. I think I've mentioned this to a couple of friends, but I haven't actually spoken about it online. So basically, as you may or may not know, I have a YouTube channel that's specifically for the podcast clips. So for those listening, if you want to go check those out, you don't have time to listen to the whole podcast. I get it. We've all got, some people like to listen to full podcasts, some don't, some prefer clips. I get it. That's exactly what the clips channel is for. It has everything from like 1 minute clips all the way up to like 5, 7 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. Go subscribe, Christian Reeve Podcast clips. Anyway, plug out the way. So this channel is interesting because when I started it, I started doing exactly, what I did with the main channel with everything else, pre-scheduling everything, pre-scheduling social media posts, etc., right? But I quickly found that I did not have the time to do all 3 channels, all the promotion for it, everything else. So my third channel, unfortunately, does not receive any promotion at all because I just don't have the time. And in the future, I'm sure I'll be able to build a team and have that ability to do that. But at the same time, I do what I can. Do you know what I mean? Like I make sure all the SEO behind the scenes for the YouTube clips is as good as it can possibly be. And also, interestingly, I've been experimenting with this new YouTube Shorts thing that I've mentioned quite a few times on the YouTube channel. So I apologize for repeating that on the podcast here. But it worked perfectly for the podcast as well. Probably more so even than the second channel. These little snippets of podcasts. It's amazing like how much you can get from every single podcast, even if it's just 30 seconds or a minute of stuff, like people will go wild for that. And I've been posting it everywhere, like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And I'd like to think it is driving a bit more attention there. Certainly when I did it, you'll find this interesting, actually. The third channel jumped from somewhere in the region of like 19 or 18 initial subscribers when I announced it, all the way up to 45 at the moment. So it's shot up.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty good. That's organic growth, and it's a good place to start. You know, I have a YouTube channel too, but I do it more for fun. You know, if people watch it, great. If they don't watch it, I'm not going to lose any sleep, but I'm coming at it from a very different perspective of where I was 5-10 years ago, where I literally didn't have time to even think about YouTube, because if you're not a paying client, I wouldn't talk to you. You know, it was all about enrolling new clients. We're screening them, enrolling them, working with them, you know, 24/7. So I didn't have time for anything like that. If I'm writing a blog post, it's got to be very methodically, you know, thought out. But anyway, let you get to your questions. I don't want to digress like crazy as I might have done before.
No. On the contrary, I feel like if anything, I'd implore you to do that more.
Okay. I mean, if you could keep me in line, and you can guide the conversation, I'll digress all over the place.
I gotta say, I don't want to like.
Sounds awkward, doesn't it? I digress all over the place. Sounds very rude, actually. But go right ahead. Go right ahead, please.
I think it depends. I mean, every guest I've had on the show, I always make it my mission to let them speak as long as they can. I think that one of the things that I do, because I look up to many different podcasters. I mean, you know, it's great to have a conversation. I think you want to have that kind of back and forth as much as you possibly can. But sometimes, you know, people, you know, if you bring a certain guest on the show, as a listener, you want to hear that person. Like, not everyone wants to sit and hear me talk, for instance. You know, I'll talk because it's my show when I want to. And if I particularly want to say something to that guest, I will say that. But at the same time, you know, I'm not under any illusions. I know that, you know, every time a new guest is here, that's the main attraction. You got to treat it like it's, I don't know, like a wrestling event or something. You know, you feature that person prominently.
I think I agree with you insofar as the heart of what you're saying. I think intelligent conversation is really the key point. You know, before we started, I was saying, you know, I had 2 podcasts, and
right, yeah.
You know, I had some people on whose agenda I didn't want to promote. I had
Why is
people
that?
on.
Like, what reason?
I had 1 or 2 people on who I knew where they had views that I could not in good conscience endorse. And so now I'm more methodical. I'm more deliberate, I should say, in screening people.
Okay, but let's explore
saying this is what I will do, what I won't do. If you think that COVID is a conspiracy against your icon, I don't really want to give that credibility. I don't want to talk to you because we're not going to have anything in common, right? And you may feel that way, but we're interviewing to talk about business growth or business marketing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But you know that the person may feel that way. Sorry, we're not a love connection, as they say.
But do you not think it's worth
I think it could be hurtful.
But do you not think it's worth interviewing people who, you know, you have opposing views with? I mean, maybe you can learn something, maybe your audience can learn something. I mean,
it depends.
Okay. Well, no, I agree with you. Like, obviously, if they've got like a really extreme kind of agenda or something like right. What you just laid out, yeah, fair enough. But like, let's say, I don't know, well, let's take marketing, for example. So let's say they've got a completely different ethos. Let's say that, because over the years, I've worked in various different companies where they mostly have marketing and sales separate, but some of them have it together, right? So like, let's say you're, marketing focused. You're like, it's got to be creative. It's got to be like this, we're focusing on the analytics, blah, blah, blah. And then you got a sales guy that wants to be on the show, but he's like, nonsense. Marketing, that's like 2% of the equation. It's all sales. You got to pump all the hours into the calls and the outreach and all that. Like, would you have someone on that show who's got like a totally different approach and is essentially saying, well, you're wrong.
I would, but only if they could represent their views in an intelligent, articulate way, and they were
Okay.
open to doing it. If their goal is to come on and just push an infomercial of their views, which does happen, as you well know.
Yeah.
So if the person just wants to promote a book or some cockamamie course or something promoting their view, that's not what I want to do. I don't need it.
I agree.
I don't need it. Look, I got plenty of food to eat. The house is paid for. I got the wife. I got the little bunny rabbit. I got plenty of books to read. I don't need it.
I kind of agree with you too.
What's important to me, but go ahead.
No, I totally agree with you. I remember the first time a business owner reached out to me to do a podcast. I was apprehensive because of that exact reason. I was like, well, I don't want this to just be like some big promotion. Like, it's my podcast. I want to have discussions. I want to have interesting conversations. Like, no one's going to find it interesting if you just sit for an hour and listen to someone talk about their business. However, it depends how they talk about their business. Like, obviously I'll ask the certain questions like, what's the payments plans like? Or, how do you work with your customer? Yeah, because I know that they want to get that across, right? I work in marketing. I know the right questions to ask. But at the same time, I want to get to know them. I want to kind of paint a picture about them. And I think, if anything, that's better advertising for them. So to give you an example,
of course.
Like, I had someone who, the first person that I had on the show was actually from Manchester. And I was like, great, local business, startup. I mean, it ticked all the boxes as far as like, I'm concerned. And that's not to say I wouldn't interview someone from a major corporation, but like, I'm more into that idea of supporting growing businesses. That kind of makes more sense in my mind for a podcast like this.
You know what? First of all, I have 2 points. One is a digression. The other one I want to get back to about the bad experience thing without harping on it too long, but it's more about a bad fit example.
Okay.
What I've always wanted to do, and I would love, and I'm just saying this as an aside, I've always wanted to be a co-host for a podcast where you actually helped people who were struggling business owners. Because I did that one-on-one when I first started podcasting, but my episodes were like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And what hurt me, just as a human being, just as a man, what hurt me and bothered me was, after you're helping them and you're telling them what they should do and could do very realistically, 2 hours go by. I would check their sites a month or two later. They hadn't done anything. I'd ask them, how are things going? Oh, you helped me so much. I loved this experience.
Okay.
But they didn't do it.
But were your
Could they do it? That's the key. Could they do it?
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm saying. What I was going to ask.
That's why it may not work. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like your suggestions would involve, major changes as far as like things they would have to do with their budget. Maybe it's something they can't afford. Like, they want to, but they just can't afford to. I don't know.
Or they don't know how to do it technically, which is most likely the case.
That too.
It's overwhelming. But I'd love to do that. I don't know if it would work in real life.
Oh, it would. Absolutely.
You'd have to paint with a very broad brush.
I mean, okay, essentially what you're saying is you'd want to do like co-hosting on a business consultancy podcast. And look, business consultancy is a massive industry. I think if people could get access to that for free, fantastic. I mean, although if I was going to do it, I would do it in this style. So I would have like a free version of the podcast, which is a lot shorter, and then extended version via a Patreon or something like that, and then make money through that. Like, you still
where we dig in more deeply into prescribing specifics.
Yeah.
So if you're game, let me know.
Me? I don't know what I could really offer.
Well, you have a marketing background, and so it might be something you'd enjoy doing. If there's somebody listening and they think that they're, that Christian is just not your cup of tea, and they want to go to bat. But anyway, it's just an idea. But I'll tell you, to go back to the point of, as far as an appropriate fit or not an appropriate fit of marketing, of overdoing it. There was one person, because I'd like to be a podcast guest. It takes the onus off of me. I don't have to work from an outline. I answer questions and try to provide value to listeners. That's my goal, and to be as authentic and as honest as I can, regardless. And there was a podcast that I said, I'd like to be a guest on that. If you're a business podcast or you seem like a nice person, I'm down, and you can work with my schedule. So at least for now, anyway, when I get to 100, I may stop. But so anyway, we had talked, hey, I'd be interested in being on your podcast. So this person emailed me back and said, well, first you have to go to my Facebook group and join my Facebook group. Then you have to also join my LinkedIn group and like me on Facebook and do that.
Screw that.
And then if you want to put an ad on my podcast, and you should, subtle innuendo follows. And I just thought,
that is audacious.
And I think the person wanted, I don't remember 100%, but I think the person also wanted me to pay to be on the podcast, which I just flat out I'm not going to do. Even if you're Joe Rogan, I'm not going to do it.
It's funny. It's funny you say that. Like, okay, first of all, never.
I just deleted everything.
Never pay either way. Like, I remember I reached out to a celebrity wrestler one time to have him, because I'm a big wrestling fan, and I said I wanted to have this guy on my show, and he emailed me back, but he was like, yeah, it's going to be like $100, and I was like, I mean, first of all, I just can't afford that, and secondly, when I started to sit down and think about that, I was like, I started reaching out to other people that did podcasts, and I was like, is this normal? And they're like, hell no. And I'm like, yeah, no, it isn't, is it? You shouldn't have to pay someone, because it's a two-way thing. It's like they're promoting themselves and you're gaining from them being on the show. It's like I reached out to another celebrity recently, and I'm currently in the process of working that out with her, scheduling thing. And I said to her, like, hey, listen, I know this won't do like anything for you, but like, I think I could, I believe in my interviewability. I think we could do something good here, and it would be good.
Sure.
And she straight up said, like, I do not like, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but basically, like, that's of no concern to her. Like, if I'm known or not, or like, that doesn't matter. It's about what we're doing. And I instantly knew, like, okay, this is definitely the sort of person I should have on the show. And this is just how people should think in general. Like,
Yeah, I agree with you. I would say if there's one wrestler who I would love to interview, or I would say in the past, because he's deceased now, I would love to interview Roddy Piper.
Ooh, that's a good shout. Yeah.
But it would only be with the caveat that I can ask whatever I want. That is public. Well, not even not even public knowledge, but I get to ask whatever I want to help in a more thorough understanding of your life and career. That's it. If you don't agree with that, then no. Great talker, but very flamboyant, but lots of extremely rough childhood. Just a guy all over the place. So I would have loved to have been able to interview him. And even if he were alive today, I don't think he would talk to me, because I'm not Joe Rogan.
I think it depends, I mean, because I get told a lot of the time that there's a lot of wrestlers out there that would be willing to go on a podcast who are like legitimate, like full-on stars. And I often wonder if I should reach out, and not just wrestlers, but celebrities in general. But I always think about, like, how can I make this entertaining? I mean, like you said right then, obviously there's a lot of information, like, you're relying on public knowledge. One of the first things I did when I was doing my research for these guests that I'm trying to court right now was, I looked on their Wikipedias, and then I fact checked that on their websites. And then, you have to do like a lot of digging and searching to find all this interesting stuff. And eventually you do find something, but you're still relying on that public knowledge. Like, so to a certain extent, you need to kind of focus on, okay, what kind of questions can I ask this person that aren't things they've probably been asked 1,000 times before, or
Right.
whatever, or maybe like a different angle on a question or something.
But as far as selling the value to them, why they should do it, the thing to remember is that, money aside, and I mean, some of these people may be struggling.
True.
They may be struggling in a very bad way. So maybe $100 could be a big deal for them at that point. I don't know. But, at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are not active in podcasting. They're not active online. They haven't been visible in a long time.
It's true.
So, what has so-and-so been up to lately could just give them some value, or just let them vent. So there could be an emotional value to them. And also, at the end of the day, it's one more thing to build, to put on YouTube.
See, here's
just
the thing.
To put out there.
Here's the reason why. And even if this show becomes like a big deal, like let's say one day I become a big success, the next Joe Rogan, or the first Christian Reeve, I don't know, whatever. Let's say that happens, right? I'm still never going to accept that I have to pay a guest to be on the show. Like, no, if you don't want to be on the show, that's up to you. Like, I'm never going to pay a guest to be on the show. And here's why. As far as it's concerned to what the medium of podcasting is, like, this is nothing. Do you know what I mean? This is an hour or 2 hours at most of someone's life, right? I do tons of work for this, and this isn't me going like, oh hey, please feel bad for me, I do so much. No. I'm just saying that, like, out of the two of us in the situation, I'm the one doing all the work, right? Not just before with the research, but also during the process of the podcast. I'm not
absolutely.
It's like it's not normal conversation. I'm not sitting there thinking like laid back and like chilled. I have to be in the zone. I have to be focused on everything you're saying and think like, should I ask him this? Should I ask him this? Where should I go? I need to bring it back. I need to move it forward. Like, there's so many things you got to do. And people like Joe Rogan make it look easy, but do you know what? Like, it's not
a team. He has a team.
That, but also, like, if you watch him, what he's doing. I mean, there's I watched a video before we came on today by a YouTube channel called, I think it's Charisma on Command. It's a great channel. It's like teaches you all sorts of things about, how to have good charisma, how to
command your charisma,
and have good social skills and stuff. And they did one on Joe Rogan with the mirror technique and several other things that he does. And I was just sitting there fascinated, because some of the stuff I do already, but some of it, I'm not sort of conscious of. I'm like, oh, that would be a good thing to do. And then you watch the clips of him actually doing it, and it's very subtle, but it changes the complexion of the discussion. You know what I mean?
No. Yes, I do. And my question about that would be, did he start off doing that, or did he learn as he went along?
I think he learned, because he admits himself, like, the first 200 to 300 episodes of the podcast were not good, or not up to his standard. They were rank. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think everyone is bad when they start. Do you know what I mean? Like, I very briefly did a podcast before the Christian Reeve podcast called the TCJ podcast, and it was me and a couple of friends doing it, and I think we did good. I think we could have gone a lot further with it, but it was a good kind of first outing for me, and it taught me a few things. But when I started doing this podcast, it's completely different. I had to come in with a bunch of research. I had to kind of think of a format as well to some extent. And over time, it's grown. So if you listen to the first couple of episodes, first 10, first 20, you can hear it progressing. You can hear that I'm slowly building something, but there's no kind of real confidence there yet. It took me a while.
Because I mean, when I interviewed people for my two previous podcasts, I would look them up on LinkedIn. I'd look at their company websites. I would write out a bullet list of either questions or topics I wanted to discuss. In some cases, they didn't have a website, or they don't have a LinkedIn page, or they told you they have a website and then you go to it and there's nothing there. I've had that happen several times.
Wow.
So it's like, I don't know what I'm going to come up with. So I've had to learn to first go here, fill out this form. If I don't like what you answer, I delete. If you don't give me something to chew on, I'm just going to delete it. uh, you know, so, but yeah, I think you have to be realistic with yourself. People look at Joe Rogan and they think that their podcasts are going to be like that. And the reality is that Joe Rogan was what? A sitcom, like a B-list sitcom guy. He would be like so-and-so's friend or something, on the sitcom, or the guy who gets killed or whatever, and then
how you gonna do Joe Rogan dirty like that, man?
Well, if he's honest, he'll admit that this is the case.
You're right.
I mean, we're not talking Anthony Hopkins or something. He was on it, and he ain't no Bill Burr. So, I mean, he would go and be on some sitcoms, and I'm sure he would admit this. He was on a couple of sitcoms or whatever that didn't last very long. Then he was an MMA fighter. And while he's certainly much better than me, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, he would send me in the next week or something. I'm not like that, but he wasn't at the top of the list. He was no Conor McGregor. He was a stand-up comedian, but never at Bill Burr's level, or, someone like Robin Williams or something, who was brilliant. So when he started his podcasting, he already had that infrastructure in place. He already had all these connections from the MMA world, from all these people from sitcoms, and he knew these mob people,
You see, when he started it though, like I know where you're going with this, and to some extent I'd agree, but at the same time, like there's a reason those first 200-300 episodes are not particularly great. And the reason for that is that, first of all, he hadn't built that structure that he has now, the format.
Right.
And he was just interviewing and having people on the show who were in his friend network, which a lot of people do. Some people make it work, but I don't necessarily think it was working exactly the way he wanted it to. And
yeah, if that's all you talk to are your friends.
And here's the thing, like, I think with all of us in life, like we have a lot of different things that we're into, that we're talented at. But when it comes to work and what you do for a living, there's going to be some things you excel at more than others. Like, okay, if you take me, I do a lot of different things, right? And I'm under no illusion. I feel like anything that I do that's just pure talking based, discussion based, the live streams, the podcast, or the videos that I do where I talk about a particular topic or something, right? To me, that seems like what I'm best at, right?
Right.
Some people might say, oh, you're a really good actor, you're a really good musician. Do you know what? I'm not. I'm okay. I can see myself getting better. But when I look at those things and then I look at other musicians, actors doing the same thing, I'm really not that good. I think I improve. I see the improvement. I'm objective about it. I'm realistic about it. But when I look at this, what I'm doing right now, I can see quick progression. I can see how it's developed over time. I can feel that it's changed and it's gotten better. And do you know what? The comments about it are getting more and more and more positive, which motivates me further. Now, bringing it back to Joe Rogan, I think it's the exact same thing with him. Like, once he realized, hey, if I just make this one tweak, if I just have these guests on the show, mix it up a bit, try something different. Once he realized and it clicked in his mind and it started working, he just ran with it. And that's why, like, you're right, it was progressive. It took him time to sort of do it over, it's not like it happened overnight. But I think he realized in of himself, this, I've got something here. This is working. And, it's like if you throw that back to his MMA commentary that he now does. When he first did that, he was not good at it. He was not prepared for it. But now he's really good at it. And I think that comes actually from his work on the podcast. He was able to return back to that and be a good commentator because of what he's learned in podcasting.
Yeah, no, and I think it's just important for people, excuse me, to realize that, you get out what you put in. Mm-hmm. And, everybody wants, the Burger King life. You want it your way, you want it immediately, and everything should be $5 or something. And it just doesn't work that way.
No.
Life doesn't work that way, and certainly business doesn't. You get out what you put in every aspect. So hit me with some tough questions, Christian.
You're eager. Actually, I want to say one last thing, just tying up that point what you just said there, the sort of having it your way thing. I got to say, I always look at life a lot like that famous Bruce Lee quote. You know,
Water.
you can't resist water. You've got to, be water. You got to go with the flow, so to speak. And I feel that that's the
Right.
case with everything, with all of these different things that we're doing in our lives. Like, once you start adapting to the situation and kind of just taking it on board, learning, yeah, you feel uncomfortable, but once you adapt to it, things just start moving, like rapidly accelerating when you start doing that.
Yeah, I think the more, yeah, I think there's more depth to that quote and that approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, jump and grow wings on the way down. Well, you can do that, but if you hit the ground, it's going to hurt really bad. So, I think the more you can be in tune with who you are as a person, with a business, if that's what you're trying to do, I think the more sincere, the more authentic, the more honest you can be with yourself and with others, and really look at yourself in the mirror and be clear about who you are, why you're doing, what your goals are, the more results you'll get. Most people don't want to talk about failure, but I think whether it's in a relationship or in a business, but I think the more brutally honest you can be about owning your failure, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to stop whatever attracted that, to make sure that BS stops, so that you can have a profitable business or a happy personal life. If you have trouble with dating, if you change your approach and can be really honest about why things didn't work out.
That's very true. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's very important that you learn that kind of ability to be objective. It's very easy to blame other people, to blame the situation. Oh, well, I just didn't have all the things that I needed right then. I didn't know what I knew then or know now, or, whatever. It's like, you got to be honest. You go, you know what? I was wrong. I thought one way and I was
Right.
wrong, or I didn't take the risk and that's why this happened. Or, yeah, I wasn't there for that person and that's why we're not together anymore, or whatever, yeah, totally agree.
Right. Yeah, you could say that you were less mature,
True.
that you didn't have the insight that you do today, that maybe you see more complexity and more detail in situations and in people than you did at a younger age, because now you've read more, you've met more people, you've lived more, so that there's more depth now. But the more you understand, but also the more brutally honest you can be with yourself, the easier life becomes.
I keep finding myself just agreeing with you perpetually, so I do apologize. But
how can you not? How can you not? I mean, what do I say that you can't? I mean, how could you disagree? I mean, what am I going to say that you don't agree with? The sky is purple or so. I mean, come on. I'm not going to say something that you're going to disagree with.
But even if you did, it would be okay.
I would challenge you.
Yeah, I'd expect
Ask me something and have me answer, and let's see if you disagree. I'll be very surprised, because it's going to be either true or it's going to be, heartfelt from my perspective. That makes life so much easier when you just stop the song and dance.
Oh yeah, again
shave your head.
I really agree. Well, I'm not going to do that, but I really agree.
But you learn very quickly. I remember when I shaved my head, I was terrified. I did the comb over like Donald Trump and everything. I did that for like maybe 2 years.
Can I just ask, why do
maybe
that?
2 years.
Why not just embrace it like straight away? Like, why did men do that? I don't understand.
I was terrified of how, I would look bald. I didn't know.
Yeah, but it's cool now. I mean, Bruce Willis kind of made it perpetually cool. So it's like, go for it.
He was a fun guy. I don't know what happened to him. Just too many god awful movies. But
oh Jesus!
But I mean, just some really awful movies. I mean,
you're not pulling any punches today, are you? Just got to
come on. I mean, Die Hard was a masterpiece. You can't top Die Hard, but you can only rehash it and repeat it so many times.
I think that series died hard.
Yeah. Just like Beverly Hills Cop. The first one was brilliant. The second one, not so much. The third one was like a Pepsi commercial.
Third one did not need to happen, but I don't know. I think the second was still really good.
Okay, I'd have to watch it again. But my point was, when I was honest about, what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
Real, I mean, come on, it's like my wife said, look, you're a good person, whether you have hair or not, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to be, attractive to me.
Yeah.
So just do it so you don't have this stress hanging over you. You don't want to have that furry halo around your head. So just go do it. And at the time I was nervous and I was doing I just went to a barber shop and just said, just get it off.
How old were you when you chose to do this?
It was at least 20 years ago.
So how old would you?
Well, no, that's not true. If maybe 15 years ago.
Okay.
So I don't want to date myself, but what the hell?
Okay. Well, ballpark. In your mid-20s, something like that.
A little bit older than that.
Okay. All right. So you'd had quite a bit of time then with hair. Then it's not like it's like I don't know.
No.
Because there's some people that start going like they get receding hairline in like I don't know 19 or something, and it's like really scary. Do you know what I mean? So I understand. I can.
Yeah. No. I started having a little thin patch when I was like in college.
I see. Okay.
And so it wasn't, a total surprise and everything. So, but facing that, and just say, hey, look, I'm the same person one way or the other. It's not like people are going to stop you in the street and could be like, oh my God, like you have horns or something or antenna shooting out of your cranium.
Yeah, it's funny. Like most of the guys that I've seen who are bald, they always look really good. Like they always have the right head shape for it. And then I look at these guys, like the thing that bothers me is this haircut that a lot of men in that boomer generation tend to have, where it's like, so they'd be like in their 60s or something, right? And they'll have like hair all here, but then it's completely bald here. And I'm like, just shave it.
Yeah, the halo, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
I don't get that. I don't get that.
Yeah, the Dr. Phil look. I think that's what you. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is with those men of that generation, that look is okay. That's cool.
Yeah. I guess it's.
Or it's authoritative. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't think that really demands power. I don't take anyone more serious. If anything, I take them less seriously because I'm like, shave that, like, please. I can't take you serious.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, I think, when you face your fears and you're honest about why you have it, it makes you kind of bulletproof to it happening again.
That's true.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at. So what else you got for me? I know I'm digressing a little too much.
No, it's fine. I should have asked a question already. Let's get your thoughts on.
Oh no, it's all right.
Now, I've just been enjoying the conversation, if I'm honest. But yeah, no. I'd like to know.
I appreciate it. You're always a fun guy to talk to.
Thank you, sir. What are your thoughts on companies that use informal language on social media? So I've got a couple of examples here, like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's is quite famous for it. Now, they are very successful with this, but I guess what I'm asking you really is, do you think it hurts their image? Because what they'll often do is they'll have someone or a couple of people that are in charge of it, and they just go.
They always do.
Right. And here's the thing. A couple of times it's got them in trouble. Like not all the time, but sometimes they'll say something like there was something recently where they did that. I can't remember the exact.
I think it was National Women's Day. Was that it?
That's it. That's the one. Yeah.
Woman's Places in the Kitchen. Not funny.
Yeah.
Not funny. Thank God they didn't do something about Black History Month.
See, here's an interesting thing about that, though. Do you remember the company that did it, actually? I
think it was Burger King. I don't remember exactly.
I think you're right. I think it was Burger King. I'll have to double check that afterwards, actually. But anyway, so I looked at that two ways. My marketing mind said, this is clever. Now, bear with me, okay? I don't disagree that it's awful, but here's the thing. What they did is they got everyone's attention with that. And then when they dropped down to the comment threads, that's where they put the second part of the comment, where they redeemed it, right? But everyone was still fixated on that first thing. It was like, okay, we see what you did there, but it's still dodgy placement on National Women's Day. It's not a good look for you. So part of me was like, they got everyone's attention. Then the other side of me was, but you know, not everyone is going to see that second part. And it almost feels like, like if anything, I would have done it in the same tweet. I feel like if you're just looking at like how to kind of do it in a playful way, because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be playful, and it backfired and it got them in hot water.
Okay. My thoughts about the whole Burger King attempted advertising. It's an attempted advertising.
You're not a fan. You're not a fan at all.
I'm a huge junk food fan.
Okay.
So, and I mean, I love freaking bacon, egg, and cheese croissants. Are you kidding? How good they are for you is another story. But I think they've done some really good, smart marketing things. But I think that was an example of not really thinking it through. And this is what happens when people talk about inclusivity and the importance of diversity.
Okay.
This is what happens when you have a marketing company. And I'm not casting aspersions at the individual marketing company because I don't know them. I don't know who they are. And I don't know if what I'm saying is applicable to them. So let me say that first in all fairness. But I mean, really, this is something that should have been more carefully vetted, in my view, that really could have, for all I know, it could have hurt them financially. For all I know, I don't know if it did.
No chance. If anything, like they probably had more sales, to be honest. That's how these things normally work.
I mean, there could be a lot of people who were saying, you know, look, I was going to go to Burger King and I don't want to do it.
Yeah, but like
it's not going to go there anymore.
Do you know what? Like I said this to another guest on the show before. Like I remember when Primark got done for all that stuff with unethical work practices in India and Bangladesh and stuff, right? And their sales actually went up, I think, like 50% or maybe even more than that when that whole thing happened.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't always come out that way, though.
No, sure. No, I mean, obviously there are instances when people, like the business just loses a ton of money. Like it does happen. But I feel like with really well-established brands, particularly that of like Burger King or something, like a lot of people know that that's one person operating that channel, and it doesn't represent the views of the company. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's...
Well, they're saying it does, though, because it's got their brand name on it. So whatever agency is in charge of that social media channel, which is what it would be. It would be a marketing agency or ad agency in charge of that channel.
See, that's perfect, though, because if it's an agency being paid by Burger King, then first of all, the agency
always is.
It's the agency that's at fault then. And also they would get fired for that, I'd imagine. Straight off that.
It depends if they lost a lot of money or if they saw their profits go up as a result, if they had increased patronage.
Good point. Yeah. They could say to them, like, hey, please make more controversial tweets. This is great business.
Controversy creates cash in some instances, not always. So if you go courting controversy, it's going to blow up in your face. Is what happened to Donald Trump. Now he's no longer in office, so he's got a slew of...
Yeah, but he don't care. Business-wise, he's probably set himself up and his family for years. I mean, I fully believe that whole presidency was not... He did not care, I don't think, about being president. I think he cared about what it would do for his business interests and his connection.
Oh, well, yeah, that's very, very clear to anyone who follows the money trail. If you just, whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you think he's the Messiah or a lunatic, he's
a businessman. He always has been, always will be.
Well, in my opinion, in my view, he portrays one or portrayed one.
He betrays a businessman.
Right. I mean, the man declared bankruptcy at least 6 or 7 times.
He's also made a lot of money as well, though. Like I'm not.
He would have made. The New York Times, I think it was, actually did a study with forensic accounting and found that if he had just taken the money that his father gave him and just put it in a bank account and lived off the interest, he would have made more money than all these Trump ice, Trump pizza,
Trump University. That was a big one.
Oh my God. a horrible debacle. But Trump,
I feel bad
ice,
for the people that went
Trump
there.
suits, Trump ties.
Suits? Really?
Yes. He had he had some suits that you could get, ties. There's ice or the water, the bottled water.
Wow, I didn't know he made products like.
More than I can remember, and I'm sure he would say they were all a wild success. But
what do you make of that pizza? I think it was either Pizza Hut or Domino's.
Yeah, the pizza commercial.
Yeah, where he ate the pizza the wrong way. What do you think of that?
He may have been thinking he was eating it correctly. I don't know.
Who eats a pizza like that? Come on, no one eats a pizza like that. That's just shocking.
He could think it's correct. I don't know. I don't put anything.
Everyone knows the bread part is the worst part. That's just fact.
Maybe he wanted to get it over with. I don't know. But what was my point? I don't remember anymore.
So we were talking about the controversy. But no, it's my fault. I hijacked that. We were talking about the controversy.
Controversy doesn't always come to your advantage.
Do you know what I think it is, though? Like, sorry to cut in, but I do want to throw one thing out there.
Stay away from it.
No. I think it's just changed over time. Like, here's a really good example. In the UK, years and years ago, we have a chocolate brand called Yorkie, right? So really hard chocolate. Right,
yeah, the toothbreaker. I remember that.
And we had an advertising campaign in the mid 2000s where it was like, Yorkie, it's not for girls. And it really went as far as to have, basically, there was one advert where a girl walked in and she was dressed like a man. She had a moustache and everything. And this guy's asking her a ton of questions before he agrees to sell this Yorkie bar. And in the end, he finds her out and he's like, it's not for girls. And here's the thing, like, a lot of people were offended by it, but like it did really good business for them. They made a lot of money from it. And they were even clever as to, because Yorkie is famously in a blue wrapper, right? So they made...
Yeah, I remember it.
They made a female version in pink, and they made a lot of sales from that. Now, here's the thing. Back then, society was very different. So like a lot of women did not find, like, I'm sure plenty of women found it offensive, but a lot of women didn't care and found it funny. Like in the UK, we love to have a joke and we love to make fun of ourselves, and we consider it banter. But I think over the years that's changed a lot. And like, for instance, that advert now, you could never do that. You'd be out of business the next day. So I think that my point is society standards have changed significantly.
I think more people are waking up in some ways, and you have to, as a marketing professional, if you're going to work with accounts like that or tackle those types of subjects, you got to be able to kind of listen to the breathing of society and be able to kind of read between the lines. I mean, on the one hand, you couldn't have today a show like All in the Family or The Jeffersons or Sanford and Son. Because actually, if you were to watch any of those shows by today's standards, they would be considered wildly radical.
What do you think?
Sexism, racism.
What do you think about? Because here's a thing that's been happening a lot lately is that, like, you're right. Yeah, obviously they were a product of their time, and society was very different, right? But by today's standards, like, a lot of these shows are now being pulled from networks, and people are. So here's a good example. In the UK, we have a comedy duo of Matt Lucas and David Walliams, and they've done shows like Little Britain.
Oh yeah, I've seen them.
Come Fly with Me, right?
And I love that show.
It's great, yeah.
Little Britain is. I wish they had more seasons.
In the late 2000s and the early 2010s, they did all these different shows, and Come Fly With Me was the last one they did. But
I love Matt Lucas, short little ball-headed guy, right?
Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah, but
I love that guy, and he's always hungry. I love him.
But the issue that they had was that they did a lot of like black facing, stereotyping, all of these things. And now people are saying that their stuff should not be shown at all. Like it should be banned from places like Netflix and stuff. That, if Netflix lists that as a program you can watch, then they should be boycotted. Like, well, what do you think about that happening?
Here's the thing. As of March 2021, which is 16th, 2021. If I go and look, and I have done this, I did it years ago. If you go back and you look at the old Amos and Andy TV shows, or the old Charlie Chan movies, or whatever it was, try to watch them. Now, I don't know about anybody else. I can only speak for myself. But watching the old Amos and Andy TV shows, hearing them on the radio was brutal. You're watching that on TV or listening to that on the radio. If you're an African-American person trying to build a life to you, it's like a kick. It's like a kick in your nether region. It couldn't be more offensive. It couldn't be more degrading and insulting to be an intelligent adult and just see people who look like you, as absolute, hydrocephalic morons, completely desperate, completely dependent on the welfare of others. There was one I remember listening to, you can come clean my porch for $2 or something. Oh, I sure will be there on time. Just horribly insulting. Everybody should listen to those or watch them to understand, why would anybody get upset over this? So, I mean, I don't know how Matt Lucas and the other gentlemen, they feel about it, but I think you have to look at could this hurt people who are struggling today in 2021? And maybe 10 or 20 years ago, you didn't know about it. We didn't have that insight, or we didn't care if we hurt someone. So I think you have to look at that and just say, look, if it's possible you could really hurt someone who's just trying to live an honest life, you don't need to rub their noses in it. You know what I mean? If that's the case, then it's in poor taste. It's time to move on. If it's something that could somehow walk the tightrope in a very careful way, okay, be very careful. Make sure you test this out on some people who would experience that. Like the whole Burger King, a woman's place is in the kitchen. Well, if you're a woman who came from an abusive relationship and you were always kitchen slaving over the grill and not appreciated, you could look at that and go feel like, I really don't need this. I really don't need this. It's like rubbing it in my face or something.
It's interesting as well, because I remember
now they have a reaction. That's the thing, Christian. Now they have a reaction, and now they can be on social media and they can be vocal and they can have more followers and it can carry more weight. Whereas before you would hurt people and you would never know. Yeah.
And with what we were talking about in regards to how society changes, I remember a time in the UK, I think it was in the 2000s. I can't remember exactly, maybe the early 2010s, but there was a point where there was this joke about go make me a sandwich, woman in the kitchen. There was this joke, which I never really found that funny. I mean, it was, it was what it was, but it was just a joke, a passing thing, and then you move on, right? But I never looked at it at the time as being sexist, and maybe that's because I'm a man, I think in more recent times, with everything that's happened with BLM, I start to look at things more from other people's perspectives now. Or maybe it's just an adult thing, but I do tend to focus on these things a lot more than I did when I was growing up as a teenager. I kind of just looked at my friends, female friends I had, or black friends, for instance, and see if they were offended, and they never seemed to care. But then again, I never asked them about it properly.
Right, and they could have been a nerd to it.
Yeah, maybe deep down they
You
did
know,
feel bad, but they just sort
you
of.
know, it's like when you had the recent Piers Morgan
Ugh.
thing where he came to the defense of people jumping on Meghan Markle and saying, which I didn't see the clip, so I don't know what was said
You know
exactly.
what? It was very simple, right? He was challenged by another person on his show, and the guy made fantastic arguments and made Piers Morgan look like a fool because Piers Morgan has harassed Meghan Markle for years at this
Yeah,
point. And
yeah, I've seen it.
the one time that someone calls out Piers Morgan and just says facts and just calls him out on it, he decides that he can't take it and decides to walk off and quits the show. And it's like, do you know what? Like that sums him up as a person. I don't think, but like here in the UK, none of us like him. We were over the moon when he went to the States for a while, and then you sent him back to us. So thanks for
He'll
that.
probably he'll probably bounce back and be a regular on Fox News or
No
something where it
chance.
would be.
No chance. I mean,
I would. Oh,
controversy in terms of ratings and controversy, he'll say things occasionally that, will get people interested, but there's always a line with these things. It's like you said before, like, controversy does create cash in certain instances. And a lot of the time, I mean, don't get me wrong, Piers Morgan, for the most part, just objectively, is a good host of a show. He can hold a debate and he'll often have a good conversation with people. But the problem is he does also attack people and is unfair a lot of the time with, and maybe he's just doing that because he knows it will get attention. He knows, it's worked many times over the years. Maybe it's because of his newspaper background. He worked for many years for the News of the World and these other newspapers. And, that's what paparazzi does, is harass people and write libel and all this stuff. So
was News of the World actually a newspaper?
it was for a long time, yeah. And then they went out of business and they became the Mail on Sunday, I believe. That was.
Is that considered a legitimate newspaper in the UK, or is it considered like the National Enquirer?
Would you mean in terms of legitimate, like something you should take seriously, or just a joke?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it something that you take seriously, or do you look at it as like a celebrity gossip, tabloid rag type of thing? You'd line your parrot cage with it or whatever.
See, here's the thing in the UK. It's interesting you asked that question, because when you take the Daily Mail or the Sun, newspapers like this, they are tabloids. That's what they officially are. But a lot of those newspapers contain political undertones or even political stories. And people will listen to that or read it and take it as fact, which is, first of all, worrying. Secondly, they'll base their opinions on that. And they always print things that are, libel, just not factual. Like, here's a really good example of something that the Daily Mail did years ago. It's about 10 years ago. They printed a story on the front page where it said 80% of school children are from an Islamic background or are Islamic or something, right? And because the Daily Mail is very famous for being against immigration and stuff like that, like,
Xenophobia. Okay.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily not necessarily supporting that, but they print stuff which gets people riled up. Let's put it that way. And
okay,
because of that, it incites a lot of. I mean, I don't know. It's the kind of the chicken and the egg thing. Do you blame the people that read it, or do you blame the source? Like,
you blame the source because they're doing something that they know is wrong. I don't want to get you off your topic, so I can write down my points so I don't forget if you want. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Continue.
Okay. One of my first jobs out of college actually was at a newspaper. I don't remember when the hell it was, but at some point I worked for this particular newspaper, and I'll never forget the managing editor came up to me, and I remember the managing editor saying, on the front page of every newspaper, it bleeds, it leads. And the person said, I want to see on every newspaper either a car that's plowed into a tree or somebody splattered all over the road, or some 90-year-olds having their 90th birthday party or something, or I want to see a water skiing squirrel or some nonsense like that.
Yeah, if it's like a
Because
local newspaper or something and it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember just feeling like, I don't really feel good about that as a bipedal with, hopefully some kind of brains between my ears. And I actually remember them sending me on one or two stories to go cover that I didn't feel comfortable with. I might have told you one. I remember going, it was like some couple that was having like their 105th birthday. Did I tell you that one?
I don't think so.
They were buck naked. I kid you not.
Oh wow! How did you deal with that situation?
They answered the door buck naked. I was supposed to go with. I went with a photographer.
Wait, how old were you?
How old am I now?
How old were you?
Pretty doggone young, because it was like one of my first jobs out of college. I don't remember exactly.
Oh, out of college. Okay, so you were at least of age. It wasn't like.
No, yeah. I was in my 20s. I don't remember exactly the dates.
Right. But, okay.
But anyway, I went to the house with we didn't have GPS back then, I don't think. So I went to the house. Took me like an hour to get there. The photographer's following me all around because we're trying to figure out how the hell to get to this home. So I go there and I knock on the door. They're an older couple, obviously having their 105th birthday. And I don't remember who came to the door first, but he was butt naked. I walk into the house. The other person is there. They're butt naked too. They're 105. So forget about any kind of, wow, this is great. If anything, that would turn you off for like the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I just remember thinking, I went out to the photographer and I told the photographer what was happening. Yeah. And he said, oh yeah, we can't do that. He's like, we could shoot them and just do just headshots blowing out the candle, but it's not going to look right. They don't have their marbles. He's like, if anything, we need to call the Department of Health or something and tell them these people come to the door butt naked. They don't know. They don't know.
Did you not have the ability to like do blurred out, I don't know, photos or something, or was that not an option?
Let's just say we didn't do the story.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I was probably a good deal heavier back then and probably a good deal less even keeled as I am now that I'm older, more mellow. So I was probably a little bit more short tempered back then and probably a good 40, 50 pounds heavier. So I was probably just like, I'm not going to do this.
I don't think that's unreasonable. I think most people probably would be like, do you know what? This just ain't worth it. You know what I mean?
You got to know your own barometer. I think I told you there was one time I had a digital marketing client call me up, and he was a young, hip, cool guy. He knew what digital marketing was. He knew all about SEO. He actually wanted to engage in text marketing, which blew my mind that he knew what it was and wanted to do it. He wanted e-commerce, everything. He had a realistic budget. It was great. And I said, well, I got to know what it is that you do. And he was very honest. Well, I'm opening new offices in your city. So I want to have a very modern website. You look like a very serious-minded professional. I really want to work with you. I like your credentials and everything. That's great. What type of business? And he told me, and my heart sank.
What was the business?
And the escort agency. A new one.
Is it illegal escorting in a state?
And he had a professional photographer, so all the photo imagery would be very tasteful, very well lit, and everything.
But is escort services legal in US? I know prostitution isn't, but is escorting?
I don't know if it was at the time where I was living, but I remember feeling uncertain about it because and I remember I actually told him, I said, you know what? I've got so many calls today. I need to call you back.
Oh, Bess.
I did call him back because I've always believed in being very honest.
Okay.
And so I hung up the phone, got off the phone with him, I should say. And I went to talk to my wife and I said, honey, This guy's got a very good budget. It would take care of us for quite some time. Okay. And now, no, we're not talking a one-shot deal. He's going to need all kinds of ongoing maintenance. He's going to need, he wants to engage in PPC, paid advertising, and, managing everything. It would be very good. She goes, all right, what is it? Hit me, because I can tell.
Yeah.
So an escort agency. And she gave me this look with like one eyebrow just went up. And I was just like, all right, I'll call him back.
But the money.
I called him back and I just said, sir, I got to be honest with you. I'd love to work with you because you seem like a great guy, but
see,
I can't in good conscience do this.
This is why I like talking to you, because you think the same way that I do. It's split. The business side. Yeah, the business side.
Would you have taken it?
Well, I'm getting to that. So here's the thing. It's split because the business side of you is like, this is good money. This is good work. This would help things for a while. And then the other side, the conscience, not just conscience, but also business too. Like, you're thinking about reputation. If I'm associated with this, what does this do for my future business? What does this do for my brand? So on and so forth.
You can't put it on a portfolio.
Right.
Really. It's going to drag you down.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about so much infrastructure that you would put into it. He was talking to me about putting his documentation and receipts to cloud storage.
Oh, wow.
He wanted to have a newsletter that would be automated. He wanted to have, I'm not kidding. Like I said, this guy was a great client. He wanted to have, a weekly newsletter. He wanted to have text advertising. Hey, Christian, guess who's in your town today? Wink, wink.
Wait. Can you explain a little bit more about text advertising? Because I'm not really familiar with this. Like, what?
Yes, you are.
What? No, I'm not. What medium are you talking about?
Oh, come on. You have a phone.
Oh, you mean text message? Oh, okay. Interesting. So,
this is a savvy guy.
So personalized text messages, like
the savvy guy, Christian. Yeah. So you would get a personalized text message, letting you know who was in your town, who could, take care of, the most important needs, I guess. But
it's like an older version of simping, essentially.
Right. So, but we're talking about text advertising, a newsletter, coupon codes, moving bookkeeping to cloud storage, automating email responses. I mean, the guy was willing, he wanted to do everything except bid on government contracts, which obviously you're not going to be able to bid on government contracts for solicitation openly anyway. You do that in some back room or something.
See, I'm still interested in it because escorting, as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure it's legal in most places, because it's that step further. It's like, can you guarantee that it is not connected to prostitution? If it's just escort services, that's legal in many places. And maybe it's not, maybe it's frowned upon, but as a business, it's legitimate for the most part. And you could probably list that and not have any issues. I'm pretty sure that's why there's a lot of websites that exist with that in of itself, being able to have a publicly listed website and be able to do that and register, because presumably he had to register his business like everyone else officially. So, I mean, it's more,
get around it. I mean, you could conceivably get around it.
Yeah.
But at the time, I couldn't, in good conscience, take him on as a client.
No, I understand. I think it depends on your circumstances. I mean, like, I'll give a similar example. It's not really the same, but like, I remember working for a company one time, major company, and one of the very first things they asked me to do, it was a really small task, but I was just a guy trying to kind of build my my experience. And they were like, hey, we need you to do reputation management. That's what they called it. Reputation management. And what
still do have it.
Yeah, loads of companies do it. It's a very official thing. But here's the thing. What reputation management is essentially, putting it nicely, it's creating fake reviews. They wanted me to create fake reviews that they would put on our website and other websites, and that would either turn into testimonials, or that would turn into reviews that they would put on websites about us, or in forums, whatever, to make us look good, essentially, and make it look legit. And I had to do this once a week, every week. I'd have to write like about 20 or 30 of them. And it weighed on my conscience. It really did, because I knew that there were going to be people, going onto that website or that forum, seeing those comments and being like, oh, this must be legitimate, and then going for it. Now, we weren't doing anything illegal, but in that part, we're not being truthful. We were being dishonest, and I didn't like that, and I felt bad about that. But here's the thing, and this is why I bring it up, because I was not in a position that I could really turn it away. I just started this job. I wasn't personally responsible for it. It was the company who was, taking it. So like they would get in trouble if they got found out. But I still felt bad because of my involvement in that. I didn't like it. And I kind of vowed from that moment onwards that if I was ever to be working for any kind of a company and there's something I disagree with, I'm just not going to do it. So,
right. You thought at the time that you had to do it.
Precisely. Because I wasn't in a situation where I could turn it away. I couldn't leverage. It's not even like I could go somewhere else or whatever. I was, my hands were, no, I was very much, my hands were tied. I was like 2-3 months into this job, and it was like either that job would be unemployed in a country that would not give you any support. Like I was abroad. So
sounds like the US. Okay.
Yeah. I was very much, I just did it, it didn't last long. I think it was like 2 or 3 months of that. And then eventually they just dropped it. But like, it made me think, and it's not like the end of the world, but it did really kind of make me think more about, because now I'm in a position I can bargain, and I can. And to be fair, if I was working for a company now, I would refuse tasks. If I disagreed with them morally, I would say, no, I'm not doing that. And if they said, well, we'll have to end the contract, then I would end the contract. And I wouldn't be afraid, because I know I can find work elsewhere. And I would be able to say, well, I left this job because they asked me to do this. And
I think I told you there was did I tell you about the marketing agency interview I went to, where the initial person was like 7 feet tall and would stand nose to nose with you? Did I tell you about that one?
No, you told me about one where there was a guy who had a bunch of female staff, and it kind of seemed like he was not engaged in the interview at all and kept leaving and stuff.
That was one. I should have gotten up and just walked out of that right then and there.
But tell us that one you just mentioned. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, that guy was like the Undertaker.
Cool.
Very, very big guy. And at the time I was heavier. Okay. And I had the long goatee and everything. I had to shave all this off with the COVID and wearing all these masks and everything. But
so this is recent. This is very recent then.
No, this was actually quite some time ago. But I'm saying I used to have the goatee all the time. It's just something to hide behind.
Sorry,
it's something to hide behind. Yeah. But so anyway, I go to this interview, and I was familiar with the agency. I knew where they were. They had a very good location. It was reasonably close to home. It was at a very good location where you could take a bus or whatever if you needed to. Lots of little shops and everything, and some good restaurants around. So it'd be a good place to work, and some decent parking and what have you. So anyway, I go to the interview at this marketing agency, and the person who interviewed me is like 7 feet tall. Now I'm like around 6'1.5". If I wear boots or something, I'm like 6'2", 6'3". So he's towering over me, and he's literally standing chest to chest, nose to nose with me. And I'm thinking, does he find me attractive? Is he trying to intimidate me? Because I could, I can still take care of things. If he's going to try to get, physical with me, I can find a way to equal the equation if I need to. Obviously, I don't want to, but, I don't know what's going on. This is uncomfortable. Why is he doing this? It's very odd. But anyway, he took me in, and he's talking to me like this, nose to nose, for like 10 minutes.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
I'm not kidding. This is like 10, 15 minutes is going on. He's just talking to me about my business or my experience. Or did you bring your resume with you? And he's looking at it. We're standing, and he's looking at it, and he's like right up in my face. And so finally we sat down. He walks me past, there's a table that had about 10 young girls sitting around it. This is not an exaggeration in any way. There's about 10 young girls, looked like they were in their teens, but they were probably in their early 20s. And they're all sitting around a table with phones. Okay. And they're doing the smiling and dialing thing where they're all sitting around. They have a pitcher of water on the table and they're cold calling. They're all around this table, all young girls, no males. Okay. So then I walk past that and I see a row of cubicles, and the row of cubicles is all filled with young men who all look, geeky, nerdy, types of guys. And they're all working at computers. And I could tell what they were doing. I was looking and they were editing websites and creating websites very, very quickly, very quickly. So I walk past those two setups. Then I go into the room. The big 7-foot tall guy sits next to me, of course. He sits in a chair that's like 2 feet away from me, and then this other guy comes into the room who's smaller than me. So he had to be like 5,
This is like out of a comedy sketch at the moment. Like.
This is really, it could have been something out of like Little Britain. And then he comes in and he's like half my size. And he comes in and he says, hi, my name is so-and-so. And he's the money guy. He's basically the one in charge of this little agency. He manages all the money, accounts receivable, accounts payable, advertising campaign spends and everything. He's the money guy. Obviously, the bigger guy is the enforcer. That's his role. So I'm sitting there. Of course, the big guy doesn't give this guy a copy of my resume. Luckily, I've got like 10 copies because I knew how the drill. So I give the other guy another copy of my resume. They sit there talking about me as if I'm not there. And then he starts talking about me. He starts talking to me rather about the role. So we talk about the role and what the pay was. The pay was so-so. It was like, all right, it's not terrible, but it's nothing that you would, get excited about. Okay. You could live, it would be all right. The work looked like it could be enjoyable work. But then he goes into detail explaining to me how they worked at the marketing agency. He said how we use one layout for all websites so that, you can produce all the websites very quickly. All we do is we change out the text, we change out a handful of some of the images, and we've got to get it done, within 1 to 2 hours so that we can produce, at least, 8 to 10 websites per day. So there's none of this talking about SEO, none of this talk about writing blog posts or social media. They have to pay much more for that. Then they go to this other tier, on and on. So he tells me all of that. I say, boy, that sounds fascinating. That's the deepest I've ever heard in my life. This is unbelievably fascinating. And I just say, you know what? I've got to be honest with you. I've had a few cups of coffee. Do you mind if could I use the restroom?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, but we don't have a restroom in our offices where we work because we don't want people wasting time with this thing. So you're going to have to, this is completely true. So he says, you have to go and use the restroom for the office next to us, which is in this middle hallway area. So I said, okay, that's fine. Tell me, how do I get there? So he said, well, you're going to have to go through this hallway and then make a left and then a right and then another left in this building. Jesus. And then you can go in there and use their restroom. So you know what I did? I went into their restroom. I washed my face. I found the nearest exit. I went out the back door.
Yeah.
And I went to go find my wife, who was at one of the cute little shops nearby.
Yeah.
So how'd it go? How'd it go, honey? I said, oh, well, it went just fine. Come on, let's go home. And would you like to stop somewhere for lunch?
Yeah. Because you just needed to go somewhere normal, like with normal people, and just
now I will
decompress.
Add this. I did have enough sense at the time to pick up as much swag on the way out. So this was quite some time ago. So I still have 2 of their T-shirts. I still have their drinking water bottle that happened to be blue at the time. And it was a great water bottle. It's lasted me at least 10, 15 years. I've dropped it about 15 times, never breaks.
Oh, I see. The company that you went to this interview with, you took their stuff, basically.
Oh, I took as much swag as I could get because it's free, of course. They're offering it to whoever's there. So I took a drinking bottle. I took about 15 pens. I took a couple of notepads, a couple of T-shirts.
I do that. I do that.
Well, why shouldn't you?
Yeah.
And you could get some of the best swag by going to these word camps and what we used to call them farms. They call them farms. But I just got in my car and left. And I figured while we were in this downtown area, let's find a cute little restaurant. And my wife knew that we'd always go out for lunch someplace nice and unique whenever Dave had an interview at the agency, whether I got an offer or I didn't get an offer or I turned the offer down, we would always go out for lunch someplace really cool.
So did this place like reach out to you and be like, hey, where did you go? What the hell? Anything like that?
Well, I applied there. I applied.
Yeah, I know. But like after this interview, right? So you walked out, you're like, nah, screw this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did they, get in contact with you and be like, hey, where are
you? I would have given the big guy a bird if he had followed me out, or they call it the Jersey salute.
But did they call you though, or anything?
No,
nothing. So just radio silence after that. It's just
no. And most agencies are like that, actually. If you were to do that, I would say most agencies you'll never hear from them again, or if you don't have an offer. I've been to many. I had been to many agencies where you would interview, and it would be like you never existed. So you don't take it personally. You just go and apply for. If you're someone who wants to work at these agencies and you're looking for work, then I would tell everybody apply for 30 positions a day. And fill your calendar with them.
But what was because I got to know, like, what was the business of this company? Like, what were they producing these websites for? Like,
they were a digital marketing agency specifically targeting local small business owners and art galleries and so on.
Okay, so that explains why the websites could be pretty trash then, because like
the business owners and the art galleries too in particular, they had no idea what SEO was. You couldn't begin to explain it to them. They had no interest, no comprehension level of it. So I had many experiences like that. And they're fun to talk about because you pinpoint what doesn't work and mistakes that business owners make, I think, indirectly. There was one woman, I'll stop with this story, but there was one, because I networked like a beast and taught boot camps and workshops like crazy back then. So there was a realtor who would be at every networking event that I went to, like a hovering specter, she would be there. Whatever networking event you went to, like a ghost or something, she was always there, just remarkable. So anyway, one day she approaches me and she said, I've seen you at all these networking events and everything. And I looked at your website and you seem like somebody who actually cares about this stuff. And, it's amazing. And she said, I've been, working with my girlfriend, who's a commercial realtor as well, and an amateur, web developer. And you seem to know so much more and produce much higher quality work. So I'm thinking about maybe we could partner up somehow. And so we talked at this coffee shop for a few minutes and everything. And she told me, she said, well, okay, can I look at some of the work from your girlfriend? So I took out my tablet at the time and I look at it, and all of her websites for clients looked the same. They were gray boxes filled with black text with no imagery at all. It was just a gray box with black text against a gray background. Now she sold these for at least $3,000 to $5,000 each.
Who's buying that?
Yeah. Now she would tell the client that, hey, if you want to get to be number one in Google, we can take you there, look at our incredible track record. We're all bogus, made up people, on and on and on. And then what she would do is, after she would deliver it, I researched this on my own so I could find out before I got back to her girlfriend on whether or not we would partner up together. So I researched this. So she had a burner phone. So every time that she would do the website for the client, she would have a different phone number. If you called it, it would just go do, the number you're attempting to call, So anyway, she had a good racket going on, $3,000 to $5,000 for a website that would take her about 15 minutes to get up. And of course, the small business owner, they don't know what SEO is. They don't care. I just need a website. I just need one. It's on my to-do list or whatever. So the woman focused on sales over everything else. Whether it was true or not was irrelevant. So she would sell on the basis of, I can make you number one in Google. Your sales are going to skyrocket overnight. Here's all these testimonials from JT and Alaska.
So it's just a scam then? Scam.
Right, of course. A PJ in Wisconsin, DJ and wherever, on and on and on. But she would get these people because her girlfriend was a realtor and this woman was a commercial realtor. So hello. She's getting people opening offices in stores in big office buildings. $5,000 for them is nothing.
It's peanuts.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I get it. It's like
that's nothing. So she would do it and then change her phone number very quickly. So the realtor wanted to work with me because I actually had a conscience and produced agency level work.
Right.
And so I told her I would be game for that. I would throw in with her if she would, work with me. But it was with the understanding that I would only do real work for real people. I wouldn't cut corners. So my work would take more than 15 minutes. It would actually take a few weeks to create, that I would work hand in hand with the business owners and so on. Are you okay with that? And after that, I never saw her again.
Since we're talking about scams, like, what's your experience of scams? I know that's a pretty broad question, but you've worked in business, so
I've seen it all. I used to have curly hair just like you, man. Well, your hair isn't curly, but I used to have hair. I mean, I've seen it all. But please continue with your question. I want you to get a little bit more in deep with it.
Yeah, no, I'm just interested to know like what kind of scams you've come across. Both just in general and in business as well, because obviously there's a lot of business scams out there. Big time.
Yeah, I've interviewed at marketing agencies who wanted me to write real books for them on spec, which means for free.
Hey, what do you mean for free?
Yeah, I wanted to let that sink in for a minute to get your reaction, because I knew you were going to do that. But yeah, that's
I'm so predictable.
Yeah. A lot of larger agencies will do that when they farm out for talent. That's the term that they call it. So remind me of the farm and I'll tell you another story. But anyway, I actually got a lot of interviews by going to farms, and I would actually pick up freelance work going to farm events.
What are these marketing farms exactly?
That's what we always called them in marketing parlance back in the day, back when Caesar was in power. A farming event would be advertised on Eventbrite, Meetup, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. You'd see it advertised locally. It would be an open house event at a marketing agency. Come get your free pizza and free beer. Maybe they would show some pictures of some cool young people acting hip or whatever.
So it's kind of just a networking event then, essentially.
Well, it might look like that, but if they had free pizza and free beer, it's a farm and it's a marketing agency. It would be a farming event. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, you're a cool young guy. You're going to want to meet cool young women. You're going to want some free pizza. You're going to want free beer. So what they would do is say, we want to cast as broad a net as possible at this marketing agency. Now, while you're there, if you're interested in the services that we provide and working with us, you're going to want to talk to a hiring manager who will be at the event. of course, to talk about how brilliant and incredible this agency is and how they just happen to be hiring for all these different positions, knowing, well, you got a couple of hundred young guys, odds are pretty strong that there's going to be, some very interested applicants there. And so those are farming events. You could, by today's standards, you would go to Indeed or Craigslist and look up, agency open house, or even Google it. Now, today you have COVID. I mean, half the population believes it's real. The other half doesn't. So I don't know. But I would be comfortable going to one right now in person myself, even if I were looking for that. But anyway, the realtor story aside, I would go to these farming open houses all the time. And this is how you would pick up freelance work. As far as the full-time paid positions, they were usually seasonal, where they would rotate you out at the end of every season, so that they would never have to give you benefits. So they would know very, very methodically what they're doing. They're using you and kicking you to the curb before you can accrue any kind of sick leave or annual leave or anything like that.
Kind of sounds like
that's a scam.
Right.
That's a scam to me.
No, I get that. But it kind of sounds like the internship deal that a lot of companies are doing now, where they'll give you an internship for 3 months that'll be free. You won't get paid for it. And then they just, at the end of that, they just rotate. They have no intention of giving you a job, and they just go to the next person.
Yeah. I interned. I interned at as many places as I could find when I was a college student. But even back then, I knew that, look, if you're not paying for my books, or you're not giving me credit hours, and it better be at least 3, or I'm not lifting a finger to help you. It's got to be at least 3 credit hours, or you're paying for these expensive books. Remember, college textbooks are always several hundred, per course. So either college credit or college textbooks, or pay me. Otherwise, I wouldn't even consider it. I would do the same thing. I would go in there, see what kind of swag they had, if any, if there's any free food or whatever, and then look for the bathroom and go out the back door. See, you gotta have your head screwed on tight. But yeah, internships, or if it's unpaid, yes, it's totally a scam. And it's completely amoral. They should be ashamed of themselves. And they know exactly what they're going to do. They're rotating you in and out before you can get 40 hours a week or accrue any kind of sick leave or annual leave. You're out the door, if you can get it at all. I don't know if the law mandates that now in the U.S. or not, or how that may have changed, and I don't know how it is in the U.K. But yeah, the labor laws have a tendency to be very flexible, but I wouldn't recommend that at all. It's very difficult out there if you're a freelancer trying to earn a living. I have a lot of empathy for freelancers, and I would love to train a freelancer like Rocky Balboa and just say, we're going to turn you into a lean, mean freelancing machine. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what you won't do.
I think, if anything, this COVID era has brought out the worst in many companies, because with my job hunting, I have seen some wild stuff. Here's just a few examples. Today, I saw a role, which I suppose it depends how you look at it, but on paper, I thought it was kind of whack. So it's basically barista / marketer. And I was like, how do these two things go together? And basically what they wanted was a person who is legit a barista, but also does all of the social media for the company, all of the marketing for the company, everything. And I was like, this just isn't realistic.
Well, of course it is. What's troubling is that they see the marketing as equal to serving a cup of coffee. And
labor. That's the thing. They'll pay you the minimum wage for that.
Sure.
So you get the minimum wage at 40 hours a week, but you'll not get paid, as you say, for those marketing.
Higher level, higher training work that they see as on level of doing dishes.
Right. Yeah. And
which is insulting. It's insulting to anybody who takes the work seriously, and it's insulting to you as a potential applicant. Did I ever send you my freelance boot camp course, the No More Bad Clients course I did?
No, I don't believe so. We spoke about it on the podcast last time, but I don't think we.
I'll send you the free version because you're a cool guy. We've talked.
Oh, thank you.
Talked a couple of. I'll send it to you, but you have to tell me honestly. If you do it, you got to tell me honestly, Dave. Here's what I think.
Okay.
Which I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
So I'll set it up so I can send it to you because I really would like to hear your objective opinion on it. But it's the idea of if you're a freelancer, because this episode should have a theme to it. I should say, if you're a struggling freelancer, I mean, good God, spot the BS before you can smell it. And the other thing is you've got to have your head screwed on tight. You've got to have a game plan. It's like hunting a snipe in the forest. You got to know what it looks like before you go pursue it. And you got to have a plan.
There's a lot of things I've learned.
And this is the purpose of it. Know who's a red flag, who's not a red flag, have a strategy in place, Yeah,
there's a lot of things I've learned through it. Like, for instance, not, underselling yourself is a big one. I think a lot of people will try to, like, I got something recent. I mentioned this, I think, in the last episode as well. So sorry for repeating this, guys.
No, not at all.
No, I just said to my listeners who listen, they probably get annoyed with me repeating things. But I received an offer from someone who had actually worked with in a different company on a freelance basis, and they wanted me to offer like a third less than what I would normally offer. So I quoted them. They were like, well, this is what we're willing to pay. And it was like a third less plus. But the draw, if you like, was that they were offering full-time work. And I was like, well, it's just not worth it. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of these jobs that I see that are listed these days, like, I'm unemployed and I'm still looking at a lot of these roles like I'm better off not going for it at this point. And like, for example, I see a lot of jobs where it's like between 16 to 18,000 per annum, right? Mm-hmm. And it'll be like sometimes it'll even be like a mid-level marketing role, which typically pays between 23 to 25. So it's just
pretty low. Yeah, that's still pretty deep.
In the UK, 23 to 25 for mid-level marketing exec is pretty fair. It depends how much they're asking you to do. You know what I mean? But like 16 to 18, to put that into perspective, that's kind of what you'd expect to earn when you go into like an entry-level office job, like as in admin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not for a marketing role. So it's I look at it and I'm like, this is a joke. Especially when you look at all the different things. Like, I think a lot of the time their HR just literally copies and pastes things from other websites, because you have like all of this stuff. Yeah,
they do. I know they do. I can tell you they do.
But it's not realistic. You can't list that in a job that's offering 2/3 less than what the market average is, or a third less than what the market average is, but then expect to have, I don't know, 5 years experience. You have to be proficient in Adobe Suite or whatever. It's like, come on.
One of the biggest problems with applying for freelance or marketing work online with employers, one of the biggest problems is that they'll have these openings, that just, like you said, have a big long list as long as my leg of what they want. And they're not only that, but they prescribe what tools you have to use, how you have to use it, what type of work you're doing. So what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what tools you're going to use. So it's like you could take a web developer, which is what I am. I do other things, but a web developer, and say, well, you've got to use this layout or this theme. You've got to use only WordPress or whatever, and on and on and on. It's like, look, I may have my own way of working that can accomplish your objectives, and I can do a really great job for you, but you'll never know. Right? It's like responding to RFPs. Unless you can have an adult, big boy, big woman conversation with them, you can never break through that BS smokescreen. So what I always tell people is, apply. It's a numbers game. It's strictly a numbers game. They don't know you from a hole in the wall, and they're not interested. It's just pure numbers. They collect hundreds of resumes every day, and they're looking for a mirror match of what they think they should have. So if I get an RFP request or something, what I do is I say, you know what? I'm so honored and so flattered to talk to you. In fact, I'm so excited and so honored. I can barely get a pulse right now. It's just unbelievable. I don't say it, of course, I'm being facetious, but what I say
it's just the way you were saying that. It's like earlier when you were telling that story about that job interview.
Yeah,
I just love just the sarcasm was brilliant.
I mean, an RFP from a practical perspective is like putting on an iron boot and kicking someone right in the badoobies.
For those who don't know, what is an RFP? For those listening,
request for proposal. Nonprofit organizations, NPOs, love RFPs because they think that's what they're supposed to do. What it really is, in essence, is a cattle call, because it's basically like a little miniature report, and they put it out and they say, this is what we want. This is how we want it done. This is how we want you to do the work, even though we're not experts in digital marketing, but we're going to tell you how to do it, what tools to use, by what deadline to do it, and how much it should cost, because this is only what we're willing to pay for it. It doesn't matter if our budget's realistic or not. So responding to RFPs is usually a tremendous waste of time. In a lot of cases, they send them off so that legally it gives the appearance of, well, we did interview other people. We couldn't find anyone who was a good fit for us. So we had no choice but to go with this company. And the other company just happens to be the owner's brother or whatever, So that happens in a lot of cases with agencies and nonprofits and government organizations and so on. It's very common in marketing. You see it all the time. The way you break through that, or one way you can possibly break through it if they're receptive, is to just send them back a very polite letter that just says, look, I'd love to work with you, but I need to know more about what you really want in terms of expectations and setting realistic priorities. This is a form that doesn't really tell me anything. Would you be receptive to jumping on a Zoom chat and just having a serious adult conversation about, how my experience could really match with achieving your goals? Maybe I don't use the exact same tools that you think would be an appropriate fit, but I could still do a great job for you. And here's all these testimonials and so on. If you're interested, here's a link that you could schedule this with. Awesome. Most of the time, you'll never hear from them again because you don't fit into that very narrow cattle call, that funnel.
Yeah.
So
I feel like a lot of companies they are just looking for morons these days, which really sucks. I mean,
well, if you think about it, who's easier to control?
I've been nearly scammed a few times. I'm not sure if I've actually spoken about this on the podcast, but funnily enough, I had a job interview today, and I mentioned this story in passing because I always find it funny. So
did you blow it off?
Did I what? Sorry.
Did you blow it off?
The job interview.
The interview. Did you blow it off?
Oh no, I'm waiting to hear back from them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But no. I told this story because I've always just found this fascinating. It's really funny. So when I finished my degree back in summer of 2017, I was looking for work, and I was working out of a hotel job. I was working like 60 hours a week, something crazy like that. So in the very small time that I did have, occasionally I was able to sort of take like the day off and go to a job interview. But obviously it cost a lot of money to commute into London, and I just didn't have a lot of money. It was like, oh, do you want to go to an interview or do you want to eat this week? It was tough times. But I made a couple of exceptions because I genuinely believe like, okay, this might be something. And both instances that I got offers for job interviews were both scams. Now, here's the thing. They were actual jobs, but they were essentially pyramid scheme style situations. Right?
Yeah, very, very common. There's a good documentary on Amazon Prime called The Slave Class.
So basically,
about that.
I don't know if it really is the same in America, but in the UK, we've got a lot of positions. I've seen some of them here in Manchester, actually. where they'll advertise for a marketing and sales role, or maybe even just a marketing role. So it'd be like social media, marketing executive, and you go and you show up, and basically they just lay out a sales pitch to you for a sales role. And it will be like, oh, we want you to regularly go to networking events and talk to other like-minded professionals and sell our product, or something, some rubbish like that, or door-to-door sales or something. But this company, they bring me up to London. I have this intense interview with this guy who tears into me for like half an hour. And I remember at one point he said to me, do you read?
Might have been the same guy. It might have been the same 7 foot tall guy.
No, it's a different guy. This guy was like self-assured. Like he just loved to terrorize people. And he's like, have you read any books? And I was like, yeah, I've read a few. And he's like, well, which ones have you read? And I was like, I don't know. And I listed a few. And then he was like, yeah, but have you read and this book and this book? I've read thousands of books, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like the type of guy he's like bully tactics, basically, is what the guy was trying to do. And he was basically trying to like expose my weaknesses. So it's like, do you have any experience in the field? And I was like, well, no, but I have this degree. And I didn't have a lot of confidence back then in myself. I'd only worked a little bit in business at this point. I'd had like an internship, but that was it. I had no experience. And this guy was just tearing in and exposing all of that. And it was a really unprofessional interview. And I just kind of left feeling a bit like deflated. And I was like, okay. But that was not the end of the situation. That was just the interview. Now we go on to like, I don't even know what to call it. Like one of his colleagues came, this big burly guy. He's built like a rugby player. Ironically,
they always have that. They always have the enforcer.
Yeah, and he was legit. He was a sales guy, but he legit played rugby. And I noticed that he was. Now, look, I'm not trying to fat shame or something like that, but like when there's a guy who's, trying to tell you that his life is amazing and that he's made 100,000, he's going to make 100,000 this year, and he's like the top sales guy and his life is amazing, and basically trying to say like, hey, you could be me. But the guy's sweating profusely, looks stressed the whole time, is like aggressive when you question him about things, like very defensive. And bear in mind, I'm just a guy there for an interview. Like, why are you getting defensive when I'm asking you questions? You know what I mean? But here's the thing. He takes me through London, takes me to the other side of London. We get like, it was weird. Like occasionally we would just be like, we didn't get transport. Like we got public transport there. So it was weird. We followed him to the train station. Then we got the train with him. And then like the interview is occurring like when we're on the train. It was weird. Like I've never been in a situation like that before. Like, it would be intermittent. So sometimes we would just be talking normally. Then sometimes it'd be silence. And then sometimes he'd start asking like interview style questions. And it was weird. And people were looking at us like, this is weird. And then we finally get to this shopping center. And we meet like the other people who've, been there for a while, like trainees, 6 months, a year, whatever, right? And they're basically brainwashed. They have clipboards. They're basically doing like sales in malls, basically, like, trying to sell you crappy products or whatever. And, at first glance, I'm paying attention to these people because they look happy. They look, I was in my mid-20s then. They look like early to mid-20s, so they don't look like idiots. They don't look like fools. They're well dressed. Like I was looking at it like that, like, okay, maybe I should hear this out. But at the same time, I'm getting red flags. I'm starting to not panic, but I'm like, there's something off about this. You know what I mean? And then we sit down because I was with a girl as well who was being interviewed as well. And he asks us to write like 30 reasons why we think we would be good for the job or something. And then he goes to talk to these people. And I'm just sitting there looking at this piece of paper. I write like 5 things on it. And then I just stop and I go, what am I doing? Like, honestly, what am I doing? And that's the thing. I start talking to that girl and I'm like, do you think this is weird? Like what's your take? And she agreed with me completely. And before
let's just go get something for lunch.
Yeah, before I could finish the conversation with her, he comes over and he's like, how much have you guys written? And bear in mind, he's given us like 5 minutes. It's not enough time to write like 30 different intricate good points. But I think what happened was he didn't like the fact that I was not a yes man. He didn't like the fact that I was inquisitive. Like, that was a danger for this. So he'd already written me off. But here's the thing. I was completely polite and professional the whole time. So when he came over to me and he said, like, where have you up to? I was like, well, I haven't had much time to finish it, but look, I've been doing some thinking and I'm feeling that, maybe this opportunity is not for me, but thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And then he just gets really angry at me, starts shouting, and is just like, yeah, oh, my colleague interviewed you and he could tell that, you're not right for this, you've got no self-esteem and you're not the right fit. You would never be a successful salesman. And I'm just bewildered. I'm like, okay. And the other girl is still sitting there watching this. And he's like, and I don't want you to affect her decision and to turn your negativity, is the way he put it, onto her. And I was like, what? Asking questions is being negative? So I just start laughing. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, to him it is. Yeah, so now imagine working in that on a daily basis. It sounds to me like you walked into an MLM.
I mean, basically, but there's a lot of them that seem to exist. Yeah. And like, I remember I interviewed for one here in Manchester, and I mean, like, here's a couple of things. Like, I walked in there to have an interview with a particular guy, and I get there and first of all, it's like 10 minutes late. I'm being kept, right? Secondly, I go into this meeting room.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's just rude. But like, secondly, I get brought into this meeting room with a different guy who says, okay, this guy is not here, or he's busy with someone else, which I was like, what? And then I have to basically sit with another guy who's being interviewed, questioned at the same time. So I was like, what? Like, what is this? I didn't agree to like a group interview. I thought this was a one-on-one. So I'm already annoyed. Like, I'm active. Like, my body language shows that I'm annoyed. Like, I'm not angry, but I'm kind of like, I'm just going to finish it and then walk out. I've already decided, but I'm going to like hear him out because maybe he'll say something that will just change my whole complexion. I don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not going to, but I like to just give things the benefit of the doubt. Right. So he asks me a bunch of stupid questions, and I quickly realized this has nothing to do with marketing. It's that networking thing I told you about before. It's just utter nonsense. And then he asks the other guy. Yeah, and he asked the other guy the same questions, and then he said something which was interesting. He said in the middle of the interview, like, oh, I can tell that this is, you're not going to go for this, you're not the right fit or something. But he said that in the interview, which I found pretty puzzling, because it's a sort of situation where, it's as much me trying to sell myself as it is them trying to sell themselves to me. I think a lot of companies forget that, particularly these self-assured companies that think they're the greatest and, they can do no wrong and so on and so forth. Like, they seem to think that like they're doing you a favor. And it's like, well, no, all you've done is just confirm that I've wasted my time. I just walked out like,
yeah, they're very common. I mean, you got to have your head screwed on tight. I mean, you said, and the stories I indicated, I mean, the deeper into the forest you go, the more nuts you find, and that's exactly what it is. It's there's a lot of MLMs that are posing as marketing agencies,
right?
It's very common, and if you're a freelancer looking for a way to earn a living, you're going to encounter them. They're like traps in the forest. You got to know how to sidestep them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I got one more sort of final question before we sort of wrap things up for today. So what do you think?
I could talk to you all day long. The only reason to tie it up is just to get something to eat and use the bathroom. Christian, go right ahead.
Listen, I totally agree. I've not even asked you. Well, I've got loads of questions still for you. I've not asked you pretty much anything here, which makes me laugh. But that's great. We've had a fantastic chat. And
today is basically a fun chat day, and just touching base with you basically.
Yeah, and I find it interesting actually. A lot of the ground we've covered, and it's still been business and marketing related the whole time, which I find fascinating.
To be quite honest, I mean, it's a bulk of my life.
Right. Yeah, no, of course.
I don't know if that's a good thing. It's probably actually quite sad, but it's the bulk of my life, really.
I don't think so. I think if it's something that you enjoy, that you're motivated by, I don't think anyone can tell you that.
There's some good things that came of it. I mean, I learned a lot from some places. There was a marketing agency that I worked for, where the director of marketing was actually extremely well qualified. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Legendary experience, unbelievable experience. But he also had a filthy, filthy mouth, and would also shout expletives.
Yeah.
He would also say racist things on a regular basis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Now, did I learn a lot from working there? Yes, I did.
Right.
Did I make some good money working there? Yes, I did. But throwing things at the wall, cursing people out, shouting expletives, saying demeaning belittling racist comments and everything. I would have stayed longer, a lot longer actually, if that hadn't happened.
Yeah, no, dude, I'm sorry, dude. David, I'm totally.
I am a dude.
No, I know. I just feels not appropriate right now. But anyway,
because I'm a senior.
Yeah,
I'm a senior.
No, not even that. I feel like when I'm talking like to people about business, I feel like when I use these like more familiar terms, it's like, what are you doing? It's just, yeah. But anyway,
I'm okay with it. Go right ahead.
I've been there. I worked with a guy who, I mean, okay, it was an international office and English wasn't his first language, but he spoke English perfectly. That wasn't the issue. But I don't know if he was trying to impress me or what the situation was, but he swore a lot, like every sentence he swore. And I felt uncomfortable. I mean, it's not like I don't drop the F-bomb once in a while. Of course I do. But I just felt like that's not something you should do in a business environment.
No, not in that environment. It's about professionalism. There's CEOs, and I've worked in, like I said, that guy, he didn't talk that way around other CEOs and other executives who he would meet with.
Oh, interesting. So he only did it around the staff then. That's interesting.
Right. When they left, he would say, well, those effing so-and-sos, they're all like that. And I remember one time he said something and he said, well, you know how those Jews are. And I said, no, tell me, because I really want to know, because my grandmother had the numbers on her arm. Tell me.
What did he do?
And I'm looking, he kind of mumbled something and left.
That's it. He didn't apologize.
Well, I'll retort with a dude, I would have responded at that time in my life. I mean, I probably shouldn't even have been at that job. I did learn a lot from it in hindsight, but it was wildly inappropriate. Wildly inappropriate. I was getting ready to punch his ticket.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, I'm surprised you kept your nerve in that. I mean,
because, well, I was pretty close. I don't know what my hand was reaching for at the time.
But the fact that he didn't apologize, though, that blows my mind even more. Like, you've just been exposed. You've said something that, I mean, maybe he didn't even like think about that. Maybe he didn't put two and two together.
I don't think most people do. I don't think they do.
Normally when you call someone out on something, it's very rare that the person doesn't at least apologize. Even if they do it in that like kind of half not serious kind of way, like, oh yeah, sorry. Like, they at least say something. Like, to just mumble something and walk out stuns me. Like, he must legit just be a racist and not care, which is crazy.
Now, I don't remember exactly. I remember from time to time he would like say, take the company credit card and go out for lunch, and you can come back in 3 hours or whatever. He would do that from time to time. And he would say like, well, we're having a meeting in Miami or something. If you want to go, you can go and help with the setup and everything so you can learn. And that's all that's all you have to do, but we want you to be trained and, and see how the business is operated. But at that particular time, at that particular comment, it struck a nerve with me. And him moving backward, going like blah, 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 mumbling something and kind of, going back into his office or whatever. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Was he afraid? Was he like shocked,
He
startled?
should have been.
No, but what was his demeanor?
I think, yeah, he seemed a little bit taken aback because my demeanor was always very quiet.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty introverted guy. I don't know how I come across to other people, but I think I'm a pretty introverted guy. I like to just do my work, and what gets me excited is doing something creative or legitimately, being part of a business, turning things around and increasing profits. Being creative, a good meal with my wife, being in nature, those are the things that really turn me on, as I say. So at that time, his statement kind of got under my skin, and I was usually a pretty quiet, subdued person. So if I'm saying no, tell me. I want to know. I think he could tell, he was either going to get a face of hot coffee or something pretty quickly. So I think he knew that something was going to happen.
So he was like, I need to get out of the office now before this guy kills me.
I think he knew. I think he knew. And the thing is, his office was in the office. So we worked about 10 feet away from him. He had an office. He'd go in there and slam the door, and you'd hear him on the phone and everything like that.
Did you ever get an apology after that? Or did you?
No.
Nothing. So you just kind of moved on, sort of thing.
Right. I think that he might have, like a couple of days later, he might have given me the company credit card and said, go take a 3-hour.
As if that makes up for things. Like, here,
right,
money, please forget that I'm a massive racist.
Yeah. But I mean, I forgot what the whole point was, but it was a story to illustrate what you were asking me about, but I'm having a senior moment. But yeah, I've been through the ringer with these agencies, and that's why every once in a while, when you can partner with a business who really wants to turn things around and they really need it and they get it, they're willing to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and you can really knock it out of the park for them. That's very gratifying.
Yeah, I've not really had that. I've not really had that experience, if I'm honest. I've had it with my freelance clients, but with the companies I work for, there's just been way too much politics, too much kind of blockers in place that shouldn't be there. Like a lot of the time when I look at these things, like I remember so many teams I work with where we would talk about the things that we should be doing, or like, the fact that we had budgets to do certain things, but we weren't doing them, or like, what other companies were doing that we should be doing. Like the conversation would always go back to that. And then like I remember other teams, like maybe I'm on a marketing team and I'm talking to the SEO team, and like the SEO team would be like, you guys should be doing this. This is what we should be doing. And I was like, you don't need to tell me. I know that. And it's not like I haven't suggested that. And I'm sure you have, but we're still doing this thing, which we know is not as effective. And it's like,
because that way of doing things makes them the bottom line, or makes them the amount that they want. So they don't see the perceived value in making that transition where they're delivering higher value to the client. They're not
but
sold on
it's not just the value.
And that's one of the reasons why people don't work for them.
It's not just a value thing, though. It's like, by a lot of the time, like in that instance I gave as an example, doing that particular thing would have meant that we made more money in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
But definite. And we would have saved money as well.
Everything is done on the basis of short-term, short-term gain. That's the way most businesses,
You can't run your business
it is
that
most
way.
Definitely.
I understand, like, if you're a startup business, you're trying to make something. I understand, but if you're a major company, you've already made it. Doing stuff like that is going to lose you money in the long term, and surely you want to continue.
Well, it should.
Yeah, you want to continue.
And it should. I mean, that's the law of attrition. The companies that can't adapt and change or deliver higher value in a certain way will go under. I think I don't remember the last time I looked at this about the exact specific number, but I think the average attrition rate, or death rate, I should say, for the average agency is around 5 years. Wow. And most marketing and ad agencies are going to be gone in 5 years. I remember I actually had a local area marketing agency contact me, a multi-million-dollar agency contact me. And I don't want to get into too much background because I don't want to say who it is. I mean, they're nice people, but they contacted me. The owner contacted me and said, we're a marketing agency, multi-million-dollar agency, blah, blah, blah. We need help getting behind this web thing. Those were her words, this web thing. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And she said, well, clients want websites and they want to be number one in Google and everything. And we're still doing everything but that. And we just, we really need help scaling our agency so we can deliver this. And I'm thinking, what are you, like 30 years and, trapped in time or something? So I said, well, here's my recommendations. I listened.
Get a website.
And then they had one, but they didn't know how to build them for other business owners. They outsourced everything to Fiverr or Craigslist or whatever. Yeah,
That's
and
nuts.
And it was very economical for them. But
yeah,
very
but how can you trust like the basics of your business and your marketing to people on Fiverr? Have you seen some of the stuff that's on Fiverr?
Oh, I've tried to get a logo from Fiverr before, and I ended up doing it like 3 or 4 times. Because
you'd be better off doing it in MS Paint than paying someone on Fiverr to do it for you.
Yeah, no, well, that's one of the reasons why I do everything myself.
Yeah,
but or most of it anyway. But yeah, it was just another example of, putting the cart before the horse. Their priorities just weren't in sync. They didn't adapt to change with the times. I don't know if they're still around, but they're not adapting. If you put them in a more competitive market, they'd be long gone very quickly, actually.
Yeah, you got to adapt or die in this market, especially now. If you're a company that's not, I would, I'd even argue right now, the new version of that, what you just laid out there, would be, not having SEO and content content marketing as part of your strategy. Like if you don't have those two things,
that's pretty much
within reason. It depends on your industry. Like I know that it doesn't necessarily apply to B2B and B2C. And, if your company is mainly like a sales focused industry and you get your sales from within the industry or whatever, then that's different. But if it's a content-based business of some description, you're delivering a service to the public or something like that, if you don't have SEO and content management in place, then like you're just destined to fail or make losses.
You're not going to get any traction.
Right.
But, but you know what? I would like to try to help with that freelancing issue. So, maybe I can send you my freelance course, through email. And then what we could do is if you think there's enough substance to it, you let me know. And we could maybe do a breakdown of it, or maybe we could talk about freelancing issues specifically when if we were to talk again, like do part 3, we could just talk about freelancing only, and rather than just letting our hair down and having fun, we could do that and really get down to medieval in it. What do you think of that?
I think there's going to be more than just one more, to be honest. Judging by the fact that I have all these questions to ask you right here, and you've just laid out the potential of doing a freelance only episode. I
want to know. I want to know these questions, but I'm starving.
We can do many more of these. Not a problem at all. Yeah. Well, okay. Maybe I'll just give you the one last question then before we.
Sure. We did a pretty good talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Sure.
So what would you say are the most kind of effective marketing tools in 2021? What do companies need right now more than anything else?
You know the answer to that. You know what I'm going to say. I'm sure you do. A mobile responsive website that doesn't take, more than a split second to load. You want to have your local SEO ideally, because most businesses, just like politics, grow locally. Every website in the world should have e-commerce. Whatever it is that you do, you need money to pay bills. Mm-hmm. So even, the Christian Reeve website, if you want to have e-commerce for whatever it is that you're providing, but even people might say, Christian, I love your podcast. I want to, donate some money or what have you. You want to You know what I mean? Every business, every website should have e-commerce. I
Yeah.
have downloads on my own website. I have payment plans. I have all kinds of mess like that. So you want to have content marketing, as you alluded to earlier, that specifically speaks to the pain points of your ideal target audience. You want to automate the heck out of your email, so you're not spending all your time responding to spam, or for that matter, if someone asks you a question related to your business, you have a template that you can send them right away. You want to have a branding that looks professional, so you can apply that to your podcast and your videos. You want to have some notion as to paid advertising if you're really ready to scale.
Absolutely.
Because your PPC has to tie into your local SEO and your content. If I do any kind of PPC, it's going to be based on my content. So those are just a few things to get started with. And they all come from having an organized, deliberate plan, because none of that will help you if you're just throwing tools at someone with no plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, once again, David, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to say a massive thank you for agreeing to be on the show. We're definitely going to do many more of these. So for those who are interested in marketing and business, expect to see more of these. And we'll definitely work out something in the very near future, and we'll do a follow-up to this, and probably future parts as well, to be honest.
If you hold me to it, and hold me to whatever it is that you want to ask. Don't let me digress. I can answer any question you come up with, and I'm happy to help out. And I would definitely love to be able to help with freelancing, not just for you, but for anyone listening or watching. Oh my God, freelancing is something I know like the back of my hand. I've been through hell and back with it, as you would imagine. And so it's something, it's also something I really do legitimately care about, because I know a lot of people are struggling out there. So I did start working on a freelancer course, but
okay,
I think it's pretty good, but I don't think it's 100% perfect yet. So I'd love to get your feedback on it and discuss that topic in the future,
Yeah, I can see at least 2 episodes from this. I think one for the remainder of my questions and potentially any new ones that I think of during that time. And then I will do my research, and we'll do a freelancing episode in the near future, and we'll push that, and we'll also hopefully just answer a lot of questions that freelancers want to know, and really kind of gain an insight into what you know, and try and provide some value for our listeners. I think that's definitely something we'll do in the near future.
And I got to figure out how to get you on my new podcast too.
Would love to. Would absolutely love to.
I would grill you like, interrogate you and
bring it on.
Like you're on Dr. Phil or something. I'm going to ask you all kinds of probing questions.
Excellent. So. Okay. Well, like I said, massive thank you, David. And for everyone listening, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. If you have, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Please make sure to give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to the podcast. Give us a rating. Give us something. and
I want to know.
Yeah,
I want to know too. Did people like the episode? What did they think about what I said? Did they think I'm bonkers, or did they like some of my input? If you have a question about digital marketing, just to interject, you can actually submit a voicemail question. Go to dms.blue/podcast guest, and there's a little button at the top there where you can click on it and leave me a voice message. If it's spam or you tell me to go take a running leap, I'm just going to delete it. So ask me a good probing digital marketing question, and I'll use it in my own podcast. Sorry to interject there, Christian.
No worries. I'll just add to that as well. If there's any particular guests or topics you want to see covered on the show in the future, please let me know. Please get in touch. My DMs are open. The Discord is available now. If you go to www.christianreeve.com/links, or if you're on YouTube, you can just find the link, permalink within the description to the Discord. It's open there. You can throw us different suggestions that you have, either for the podcast or just in general for myself. And just let us know what you want to see from the podcast, and let us know your thoughts on how it's going so far. Thank you very much for listening. And until next time, peace out, one love. I'll see you in the next one.